When you're starting out, you need users that fit different criteria than later on. So they need to be more risk tolerant. They need to be very generous with feedback. They also have the traits of early adopters. And last but not least, early customers are usually smaller and medium companies. Why? Because decision-making process is much less complex. For example, you can just convince founder to take your solution for a spin, whereas in the big enterprise, you would have to go to compliance. There are so many unknowns, and that's okay. You don't have to pretend that you know stuff which you don't. It's better to go out there and generate some evidence, some sort of information, intelligence on base you can make this decision. So we have to be okay with the idea of embracing uncertainty, and we have to believe that experimentation works. This is how I shake off all the responsibility as a founder. I don't know, I will test it.
Welcome to the Invisible Ink podcast. I'm your host, Shubha Chakravarti, Chief Financial Storyteller at Achieve. Our guest for today is Maja Voje. Maja helps companies build and execute winning go-to-market strategies. She's a best-selling author of The Go-to-Market Strategist. Maja has spent 15 years working in growth and marketing across a spectrum of high-profile unicorns, enterprises, and over 800 startups, helping them grow to as much as $100 million in revenue. Now, here's Maja.
Hello, Maja. Welcome to Invisible Ink. We're so excited to have you here.
Oh my God, it was about time, wasn't it? I'm so hyped to meet your community.
Fantastic. So I love your book. I should just tell you, I ordered the paperback too. I was reading it again in preparation and I decided I needed both the Kindle and the...
Let's be book friends.
It's the best book I've read on go-to-market strategy, which is why I've been so persistent.
I wanted to hear that.
Yeah.
And you have read plenty, huh?
Yeah. I read
Knowing you are a very studious person.
I'm a bookworm. So anyway, let's just jump right in, right? This go-to-market strategy is like a very nebulous term. Different people mean different things, but you are very specific in what you mean by go-to-market strategy. So let's just jump into that. And how do you view go-to-market strategy and what's critical about that for you?
So I see it as your best attempt to align 6 elements that are mission critical when you are conquering new markets, where you attempt to do this. So the first one is market, knowing the competition, knowing what's up there. The second one is just like your ideal customer profile. And later on, we will touch upon my very special definition of it, that early should come before ideal. Then we definitely have to be considerate of product, that it delivers the value added to the ICP that we have in mind. Later on, we should know how to say this, how to present this to our audience. So that's positioning and messages. And nevertheless, we have to charge money for it. That's a good idea. So it's pricing. And then we need more users. Then we need to figure it out how to build a growth and sales system around this. So in the beginning, we are operating with a lot of unknowns, right? And we can make a very informed attempt based on our research, but the beauty happens once you are actually there on the market, testing all these assumptions, and you will learn a lot when you are learning by doing. And just like in terms of go-to-market, I know that a lot of people are mistaking it for the launch, whereas the go-to-market literally has 4 stages. First one is problem solution fit. We won't be tackling problem solution fit today. This is a topic for some other guest. Then we have product market fit, meaning like your product can actually deliver the value to customers predictably well. And what is very problematic, I think that for the founders that are listening to this podcast, go to market fit. So that's a beautiful moment when things suddenly align and you no longer have to worry where your next customer is coming from. You have literally built a repeatable and scalable way how to acquire customers. And scaling is a little bit further ahead. So today we'll talk about product market fit and go-to-market fit. Is that okay?
Fantastic. That looks great. So before we jump into it, right? So as an expert looking into this, to you, what are the signs when somebody has a good go-to-market strategy? Are there telltale signs of a good go-to-market strategy?
Okay. So first of all, if somebody says that their go-to-market strategy is LinkedIn, I'm worried. It's definitely not go-to-market strategies. As we learned already, there are several elements that you need to apply in your go-to-market strategy, and that's more than the channel. So that's the first thing. And the other thing, which is often very problematic, is that people are just like mistaking it for marketing and sales, which is also not the case, as we know now. Because in reality, in bigger organizations, who is probably in charge for go-to-market? It's RevOps, these are product managers, product marketeers, but in early stages, these are usually founders. And it's such an important part of your job because this is how you keep the lights in the office on.
Got it. So you touched on a really important point, which is early on, it's the founders, and in many cases, they're bootstrapped, right? So I know we're going to get into the 6 elements, but before we do that, is there like a high level piece of advice or pointers that you want to give to bootstrap founders that will help them come up with a more effective go-to-market strategy when they don't have a lot of money and the money to hire a team?
Yeah, so we can be super tactical about this. I actually prefer to use free channels in the early stages. Why? Because if everything else fails, you can still buy users. Yay! But ideally, you are solving a problem big enough that people will actually care for if you are presenting your product in online communities, for example, or if you are talking on events and there are social media to use in order to promote your product. And you can always ask for recommendations and do like warm intros, stuff like that, right? So a lot of time, as I do hear this argument of just, but we don't have the budget and I don't know how to do this or something like that. Yeah, surprise. I didn't know how to do this as well. Like I literally had to learn that myself, but I learned because it is mission critical. And as you are just like learning this stuff, I think that it eventually makes you a better boss because you speak the language and you can actually like monitor and manage people better. So this investment definitely pays off.
Love it. So you talked about several of the misconceptions that, LinkedIn is a go-to-market strategy, marketing sales is go-to-market. Is there one like superarching misconception that you see founders, that trips up founders over and over, like one thing? Is there one thing?
Right. So we already mentioned it, but it's like mistaking it for the launch. And I was doing a bunch of meta advertising for my newest product, go-to-market checklist. And I actually saw that a lot of people on Facebook and Instagram do not even know what go-to-market is. When we tested, like when we split tested go-to-market and launch actually performed better for the sales. So I was like, we still have to learn a lot in order to just like make this term mainstream. But there is another important point that I have to stress immediately, which is go-to-market is going on all the time in the organization. If you really think about this, so it's not only launching the product for the very first time, but as you are growing, remembering the stages that we talked about previously, you are opening new ICPs. So you are targeting other people. You might be expanding geographically, so to open new markets, like new countries. And last but not least, your product will evolve. So you might launch like a new feature, then there might be another product in this family or something like that. So it's a really ongoing process, not this one magic moment in time that we call launch.
Love it. So that's a fantastic setup for your whole framework. So let's just dive in. So you mentioned that the market is the first thing that is the most important. So what is the right approach? How do you look at the market? How do you look at approaching segmentation and how should a founder think about that?
Right. Some people would say that I'm a little bit too obsessed with competition analysis, but I very much like to know what or who am I competing against, right? Coming from your knowledge of ICP, we should also be like very laser focused on competitive alternatives that are relevant to them. Because if we just do this desktop research, like Google, who does something that we do, we might come with very like wrong answers. Sometimes, and that happens a lot, if you are launching something really innovative, like an AI product or something, you would be competing against services or just like doing this job yourself or pretending that it exists. So it's mission critical to align your understanding of the competition arena to the factors that your ICP, like your persona, actually cares about. The second thing, which is super important when it comes to market, is that people have a lot of problems narrowing down their target market. And I get it. Why? Because I'm a founder myself and I would like to change the world and I would like to help everybody. But if I scarce my already limited resources towards like multiple different segments, I won't generate the critical mass. I won't get that far, right? So it's within my interest to really focus, to do the research and the scoring of these opportunities previously. Strategy could be seen as just like allocating limited resources against unlimited opportunities. So it's your job in this type of market research to find your best bet. So you are searching for this tiny little market segment, which is called beachhead segment, and it fits 4 criteria. The first one is that this type of profile needs to solve this problem now, not next quarter, not in a year, now. Like literally now is the time because you have 3 to 6 months to make it or break it. Then the second one, super important if you're bootstrapping, is that this part of the market needs to demonstrate some sort of willingness to pay. And this is a terrible mistake if you are not taking this into consideration early on, because I know teams that have generated 7,000 users organically just to see that nobody of them would pay for this type of solution, right? So the earlier you can validate that, the better for you. Then for the third part of just what is important in your early segmentation effort, it is your proximity to that specific target market. So Shubna, if we go and try to sell something to construction workers now, would we be very successful? Maybe you would.
I wouldn't.
So probably not our best chance. We don't know that market. We don't know anybody there. We don't know their lingo. We don't know where they hang out. It just screams trouble. So we should be having some sort of proximity. And last but not least, this early segment should be selected in the way that it produces relevant evidence of traction, meaning testimonials, case studies, and just like good references that you can mention in your future sales calls, so that when somebody, for example, from the hotelier industry asks you, yeah, okay, have you been doing any work in hospitality, that you are not, we have been working with newspapers and with secretaries, no problem, we got you covered. Because people will want relatable references when you are moving up market. So that in a nutshell is the logic how we do early segmentation. And it is very, very, very difficult to just go and decide and stick to this decision for a quarter or 2 without having any evidence. So the best recommendation that I can give to any founder is test different segments. If you think that your target audience could be moms, but also like teachers, and then you might have some sort of self-improvement books, go and test it. Don't guess. Don't just say, oh, like mom segment, they are very friendly, let's rock and roll. Just do some initial work to validate if this segment is responding to your value proposition. And that would be like my honest advice to you guys.
I love it. So I have just one on that, which is there's this accessibility and proximity, which I totally get. And then there's also the question of, is this really an try? I come from a finance mindset. So I'm always looking at what's the size of the opportunity, right? So does that figure at all into how you look at market opportunity? And if so, how does it?
So in terms of growth prospect, I am trying to just have these sanity checks that this is not like some dying niche market, that it is like a proxy of a bigger market. So that's like kind of an assumption that you have in the beachhead segment strategy, that first you win this tiny piece of market and then you move up market. So that would be like literally framing of this decision making. I'm so happy that you stressed this out. Of course, I don't want to go and serve to a market that maybe has a market size of 50 companies if I'm selling some sort of SaaS that needs volume. If I'm selling engineering solutions for autonomous vehicles, I can. But yeah, if you need mass needs to exist.
Okay, great. And then you talked about evidence, you talked about testing. Can you offer maybe one tip for somebody who's just a small founding team on best ways to get that evidence quickly?
No problem. So a lot of my AI tools are just like generating early traction in Facebook groups, for example. Some do it on Reddit, like then what else is very cool, outreach. So you can like literally spam people on LinkedIn without judgment. It's a technique that works. And look, if you cannot decide on this, like without doing any sort of like solid research, go out and test multiple different segments using very inexpensive and very fast-paced methods, and then reverse engineer the users that are successful. So either users that are retained or users that have paid for this type of service, because this is literally how you learn by doing. This is one of my favorite tactics that I'm using with practically all AI agents that I'm working with at the moment, because in that space, such innovative space, it would be dangerous to guess. We don't know what will happen. So we would rather assume that our audience are B2B marketers and then learn that agencies are actually the ones paying for this product and just revamp our go-to-market strategy to be centered at them. I wouldn't like to just, here is Magda, let's find 40,000 Magdas on LinkedIn based on my brainstorming exercise.
Love it. Okay, so that brings me to my next question, which is you talked about ICP, which stands, I think, for ideal client persona. So then that brings us to the second profile. Sorry. So that brings us to the second pillar of your framework, which is the customer profile. And you talk about ECP versus ICP. So can you talk about why there's a difference there and how I should go as a founder, go about finding my ECP versus ICP?
Yeah, sure. So my ECP profile is a very disappointing story. I realized that when your product is just like off grounds, that you cannot really target the client that you have in mind. For example, if I go and I try to pitch, I don't know what investment banks have you been working with, they would be, you will never pass the compliance. You haven't existed 6 months ago, right? So I would have a much better fighting chance if I first just like apply this beachhead segment logic and try to win more approachable segment. But very important, this segment should be a proxy of whatever I think next. Let me walk you through an example of Clay. I hope that your audience knows Clay. For those that don't, it's a data enrichment tool. So for example, if you want to have a list of all the marketeers who works in manufacturing, you could develop like this type of data with data enrichment in Clay. And their like beachhead segment were literally outreach agencies. Later on, they expanded to internal teams because those might be interested in what their agencies are using, right? Based on the next traction, they went to like super hot startups, OpenAI. I'm even like, I shouldn't probably call them startups anymore. So unicorns, Anthropic and OpenAI, and now they are looking at Corpo. Why did not Clay like start with, we should be used by PepsiCo and McDonald's? Because nobody would take them seriously when they are starting out. And that's the whole point of what I'm saying here. In the beginning, when you're starting out, you need users that fit different criteria than later on. So they need to be more risk tolerant. They need to be very generous with feedback and like work with you when something is wrong. But they also have the traits of early adopters. So remember this burning pain point. Meaning, if you post about this on Facebook group, like they would be, oh my God, why was this not existing already? I totally in, I will try it today. So this type of signals, and last but not least, early customers are usually smaller and medium companies in most cases. Why? Because decision-making process is much less complex. For example, you can just like convince founder to take your solution for a spin, whereas in the big enterprise, you would have to go to compliance.
So there's this obvious connection between beachhead segment and the early customer profile, right? Because they're coming from the beachhead segment. How do I go about finding them and how do I define my ECP to have as good a shot at success as possible?
So I would definitely use the beachhead logic, but also what we talked about already from reverse engineering early traction. I would definitely invite these people for the interview, and then I would put together AKA ECP persona. So I need to be able to understand how to like attract more of them. And ideally, based on my initial traction, I would be seeing some patterns. For example, these are like smaller companies with up to 50 employees with, I don't know, 5 people working in marketing, and they work in this and this and this and that industries, so that I could make this profile actionable. By actionable, I mean I would be able to describe it either in my outreach efforts, or I could target like conferences, events that attract these type of folks, or I could be able to describe it in my advertising tools. So that makes things a little bit more fun. We are just ideally reverse engineering initial traction, but if this is not an option, you can still go and test a couple of segments directly and see what sticks. For example, whenever we are doing outreach, we don't know like the company size, right? Because we could be a company can have between 10 and 2,000 employees. So I would prefer to divide this in batches and just observe what happens within a certain batch, right? I could still be operating with assumptions in this specific scenario. But with early adopters, you really don't have to overthink too much because it's very likely that they will find you if you just appear on the places when you are active. And how you learn that is literally either you have beta users, either you can access some people through your network and you ask them this. Which are the influencers that you are following? What communities are you active in? And nevertheless, what is super, super, super important is to get sort of like industry insight. Ideally, you talk to them, you have interviews. But oftentimes, like this media space, how they are obtaining information is hidden. You cannot like really do the desktop research on this because there might be enterprise communities, there might be professional groups, there might be like, I don't know, people meeting each other in real life. So you really, really, really need to dive into that. 70% of time in early stages should be spent on defining and redefining and refining ICP. Because everything else in go-to-market evolves around that specific decision. Positioning, pricing, growth channels that you are selecting, right? We have already talked about this. And this is like one of the biggest things that you have to nail.
I love it. And one last thing on that, because you said it is so important and you said founders have to have an understanding of here are the things I know about my ECP, right? How do I start defining those parameters or characteristics of my ECP? What should I be looking at? Because we've all seen the ICP, we're like, oh, this is Jim, a manager who's 30 years old.
Can we just share like this template ECP framework that I had prepared?
Yeah, if you can just send it to me,
everything is there. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So what I'm hearing is this has been kind of boiled down to a science and all you need to do is kind of go through that. Okay, done.
Based on research, not based on your figments of imagination, okay?
Yes, well taken.
Cool.
I'm all for empirical proof, right? So then the next point you mentioned was product, like when you laid out your framework. And when I read the book or when I read the book, I remember the phrase you talked about, the product is really a medium of value exchange, right? I remember that really well. So what does this mean and why does this matter to a founder as part of their GDM strategy?
So good. Love this question. So product is a bridge. Here am I, your user, in the present state that sucks a little bit and makes me miserable. And here is my dream. So this is my desired future outcome. Product should deliver value from the status that sucks today towards something that I actually want to achieve. Ideally, I would be like 10 kilograms lighter before summer without having to do any exercise, but that will probably not happen, right? So we have to make sure that this value delivery that we are pitching, because people can get really wild on promises, especially like in AI. Save 80% of the time, save 50% of the time, say, yeah. And like a cynical, critically minded user will say, based on what? Like, what numbers are you pitching here? What is the probability that I will achieve this? What's going on here? So especially in early stages, we have to back all the claims that we are making with solid evidence, with either social proof, with our like data analysis that we have been doing. And ideally, we would come up with some case studies or user testimonials. This is super important because as I'm explaining, this is from direct marketing and sales concept, right? So this is like super, super, super sales heavy. And as you are starting out, you have very little trust, very little credibility, very little traction. So my best advice to you is social proof shit out of everything. If you're saying it, this is how I can back it up.
Meaning that I want those testimonials, I want those references, and I want those case studies with big
Even from
names.
beta users.
And is there anything pre-beta that I can do to even get my beta users?
Friends. Hope we have friends. Or just mention this in online communities. But no, seriously, the majority of us, we are sourcing beta users from our personal network is what it is.
Before we dive back into our conversation, I want to tell you about Seed to Success. Seed to Success is our community letter with our proprietary insights on startup financial storytelling, tips, new episodes, and much more. If you find these discussions helpful in your entrepreneurial journey, use the link in the description to subscribe to Seed to Success today and get all of these and much more straight to your inbox every week. Now, back to our conversation.
Okay, and I want to ask just one little question on product. You talked about the general case, but if you're talking about large B2B, not technology, but STEM, like deep technologies and clean energy things, how did this change? Would you say anything different, or would you add anything to what you just said for those founders?
Onboarding is a little bit heavier. So I'm working with one of the really cool companies in clean climate tech space with AI, of course, because everybody that I work with includes AI these days. But seriously, their go-to-market journey was literally dumb, cold emailing corporates, participating in the startup programs. They were part of Techstars. They were in corporate accelerators. They were working their asses off for 8 months in order to just gain access towards these ICP. And how they secured the first project is literally by them hustling and grinding through networks that already exist before somebody said, okay, you can apply this technology. Let's see if it will work. Then they had to do a lot of work on just onboarding the users. So the architecture that they set up, just the whole setup of the use case, was very labor intense. And this is your investment into securing the first use cases or pilot setups. Based on that, it's easier. It's so much easier if you are saying and NVIDIA has a working pilot here. Whoever would like to be NVIDIA, right? So it's a long journey. It's definitely not a risk-free journey. You will have to do a lot of work in order to open this door. But the good news is that these deals are much more lucrative once you have secured them. So if that's your route of choice, patience, please. And good luck.
Thank you. And it sounds like everything that you said is the same thing, except multiplied by maybe a factor of 10 or 100, just because of
and extend it in time.
And extend it in time, which because of the friction, the uncertainty. And I'm also hearing a piece around multiple parties who have to kind of bless it, and you not knowing who the key decision maker is. And is there a piece around, since we're talking about product, is there a piece around value definition in this product piece for those kinds of businesses? You go in and you say, hey, I have this technology, it can do this and this. And you start grinding, you get into these online communities, you do all these things. Do you see a chance of changing what the product definition is and what the value is? In other words,
all the time. Oh my God, literally the best products that I work with are made to pivot. Seriously, the core architecture, the whole way how the technology works, the engine, it's hopefully the same, but there are so many changes. So I'm using this concept, product market fit cycle, and most of the companies pivot at least 5 to 7 times. Often we have to change the product. If we are lucky, we can only change the channel and positioning. But yeah, as you see users interacting with your product and seeing if they get the promised value out or not, and what other features are they missing, always keep these options open. But hopefully that won't be too exhausting for you. So you can still go and try to pitch the same product towards different ICP or something like that, because product changes are quite expensive.
Yeah. So it's fascinating because what you're telling me almost sounds, look, if you have to pivot, at least do it within a disciplined framework of a go-to-market strategy where you have a clear understanding of what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it, as opposed to, oh, XYZ person didn't like it and therefore I'm going to pivot and now where am I at, right? Is that?
Yeah, but more often than not, sorry to interrupt, especially with technical founders, they would always prefer and they would biasly prioritize that they should work a little bit more on the product instead of maybe changing something which is going on like in marketing and sales. So before going to the product, I love to eliminate all other options to just give it a fair chance within other elements. So different ICP, different positioning, different channel. Like product is something that I am very conservative of change. But yes, if you have been working on this like for a quarter, for 2 quarters or something like that, and there is no tangible movement, that's an option as well.
Perfect. And then one last thing on product, you mentioned this idea of PMF, product market fit, kind of like the holy grail, right? It's been thrown around a lot. Everybody's, we need to achieve product market. What is, in your view, what is the data-based objective sign that somebody has achieved product market fit, and how can they accelerate their path in addition to all the other things from a product perspective?
Official academic answer to these are retention cohorts. But before we can really observe this at scale to make it statistically significant, there are like product market fit signals. For example, your users might love the product, like they spoil you with a lot of positive feedback, recommend others to the product. That's definitely a good sign. I would celebrate this one. Then activation. The experience of wow moment is relatively easy and people get it. So you don't see a lot of friction between registrations and whoever experienced the wow moment that you defined in the program, in the product. A very radical example of what actually happened to me when I launched my first AI co-pilot, which was a chatbot in very technical terms. So I launched it on my Substack and my own LinkedIn, and I assigned a certain amount of credits to it, right? So this was the number of credits that I was comfortable paying for. And in a couple of days, I was just like bombarded with these DMs like, your chatbot is not working. And I was like, gosh, it should be working. I mean, we have been testing it. So I checked it out and I saw that in a couple of days, people just used all the credits. That was definitely one of the signals of product market fit as well, that they wanted to have their product back after it accidentally disappeared. But nevertheless, whenever it comes to just like product market fit, I would even rely to a weak signal such as conversion rates. Because when I am observing just like conversion rate on my landing page, I can like clearly see if people are reacting to what I'm pitching or not. And I can already start working on like a different positioning or different type of acquisition engine. So I would like literally take whatever I can get as a good news, as a potential learning in order one day to have thousands of users that I could be analyzing with retention cohort. And there is like one more mechanism that some people love, other people hate. It's called NPS score. So from 0 to 10, how likely would you recommend this product? But I prefer they actually do it, not say that they would do it.
Got it. And would you change any of the PMF criteria that you talked about? This retention cohort, very easy for SaaS type products, right? But when we talked about
you need to have a critical mass. You learned about this like a little bit later.
Okay. So is there anything different in terms of like a large technical product of the kind you talked about, like the clean tech company we're talking about? How would they know they've achieved product market fit?
I wouldn't bother too much with this. I would be laser focused on getting like free enterprise clients in the next 6 months or so. So a product market fit signal for me would be that the client would be satisfied with this pilot, that I would get like official stamp of approval and I could be start monetizing and expanding this account.
Fantastic.
I wouldn't be like we need to measure product market fit on the sample of free corpus that I have to sell to.
Fantastic. I love it. So then we come to the one that's my favorite, which is pricing, right? So all of this makes sense only if you can get money for what you're doing. So how, one big thing you mentioned early on is this point around willingness to pay. How can you test willingness to pay? And how, especially can you do it if you're talking about these, these large B2B technical type solutions that we just referenced?
Okay. So I will just be totally frank.
Please.
What we do in these cases is usually that we are getting some offers from competitors. And as a new player on the market, you are like 20, 30% plus minus within that range. Because if there are some direct competitors, people will probably benchmark you against them. And if you're a smaller company, depending on what type of technology are you building, this is like a very good anchoring. If this is not available to you, you can like literally test this on the sales calls and try to increase price sequentially. So you first figure out with just like this initial price, whatever flows, whatever feels good to say on the sales meeting, because you shouldn't stumble when you are saying your price. You should feel super confident. Otherwise, it won't go that well. So whenever you are like expanding on the market and making new offers, you can raise the price by 20% and see what's happening with conversions, right? And if you are still like seeing conversion rates, which are like higher than 30%, you are probably still too cheap. You can still have a little bit of a mess to work with. And what I love to do as somebody who's developing products, this is more like for a low-end product up to 10K. I just ask on the sales calls, what's your budget for this? Or what would be fair to pay? And try to work within these limits. If you have a champion, this is like super, super, super easy. Now, for the product-led companies, it's easier because, again, like competition usually has prices public. And we can use the same type of framing as I was explaining before. But we can do a lot of experiments as well. So we can literally do early experimentation to test different price points. We can play around with discounts. We can play around with pricing parity for different companies. That we can really, really, really make sure that this data is solid. We don't have to, like in the previous case, just hope that our anecdotal proof will turn out to be a profitable reality.
Got it. And then is there anything analytical? So you talked about the market testing. Is there anything analytical that backs it up to say, here's how my price should be, or how to keep, what is that conversion point where you say, I've gone too far? You talked about 30% being too low. What's too high? Like at what point?
Depends on the category. Like seriously, if you want to do legit pricing surveys, these are like Gaber Granger and Van Westendorp. So these are surveys that require like thousands of responses. You can Google that, like how to do the willingness to pay research. You will come up with this usual suspect. But when you're doing sales like 101, the scale that I would introduce, look, if 80% of your customers is accepting this offer, you are brutally too cheap. This is a terribly high acceptance rate, right? If nobody really cares, if you are like in the 10% of acceptance rate, I would first tackle the positioning problem, how we are doing the sales and how we're presenting the product. So this is like something that I wouldn't tackle as a price point per se, because what I think is the biggest scam in microeconomics are supply and demand curves, aka if you would make it cheaper, that people will want it more. This logic is so off. I mean, I don't want to have cheap cosmetics on my face because I'm afraid that it will ruin my skin.
Got it. So I love that. I love the fact that you said don't go to pricing first, which brings us to positioning, which is what you mentioned. So
Awesome.
how do you view positioning, and what should this early stage founder be really tightly focused on when they're positioning their product?
Cool. I like to start with UVPs and USPs. In very simple words, UVP is unique value proposition, meaning your promise to the customer that you have to be able to deliver. And unique selling proposition is why you. Why not a competitor? Why not ignoring this problem? So something that would make them react. Now, I love to start with this. This is what I literally include to all of my product development documentation. UVP, USPs everywhere. Now I will tell you a very stupid shortcut. You can just put in all your competitors' websites in in AI model of your choice. Like I've tested it in Claude, in ChatGPT. Sorry, I don't know. I'm using it on a daily basis, and that one didn't flow. But yeah, you can just like look. These companies have written this. Now our product is this and this special. You are a senior product marketer or positioning experts. Develop me UVPs and USPs for this product. And then you go out and test it. How you test it, my favorite ways how to do this is with ads, because with a small ad spend of $500 to maybe $2,000, you can like already figure it out. What is the type of presentation of your product that moves the needle statistically relevantly? But if this is not available to you, you can do this on the sales calls as well, right? You are searching for the moments when your prospect is lead, like where they're really interested. So I would definitely want to do this type of sales myself as a founder, that I am seeing the intangibles as well. And it's very quick to test with outreach as well. So outreach officially doesn't cost you anything, just the tools and data enrichment. And you can like literally test this by sending like different type of LinkedIn invites or like cold messages, right? So I would be testing my UVPs and USPs first. This is something that I'm literally obsessed with. Now, before I do that, there is one other mental framework that would help me a lot. Meaning that what we said in market research is that we are always competing and positioning against something or someone or doing thing. I really need to understand what are the competitive alternatives that my customer is considering at the moment. What are the evaluation criteria, how they are making this decision, where based on scoring these opportunities, do I have a best fighting chance with the product as it is right now, not in 5 years. And I'm trying to understand my unique differentiated assets. So what makes me me? What makes my technology, let me use the word superior here, in comparison with other competitive alternatives that my ICP is considering. Simple as that. I don't like to overthink positioning in the early stages because I am yet to meet a team that wouldn't change it in the first 3 months once the product actually hits the market. So I take it as a very simple assumption meant to be broken and just like robustly test the S out of it, because that's the only way how I could be getting like any good insights down this line. What helps is whenever you have this social proof, like testimonials, use cases, or something like that, you can use this language for help, like for significant help when you are defining this stuff by just like listening how your customers are describing your product and value that it delivers to others. So that's a little bit of a shortcut. This work is daunting. It's never finishes. Like literally in 3 months, as your product will get better and you will know more about the market, you would be inclined to change it. But I hope that I at least gave some actionable insights here.
No, you did. Because what I'm taking away as you were speaking was you need something, but not so much that you waste
Yeah.
But it's still objective enough that you can poke holes in it with actual data to test something very concrete. And then you keep refining it quick, like the quick and dirty iterative process. So it works for me, at least as a founder and from the founders that I work with. So the last thing I want to talk about in terms of your framework is you talked about growth and channel. And this is where
finally, this is my area now. The rest I had to learn.
So channel is the one where I see founders kind of tripping up all the time, because especially if you're a technical founder, you don't know much about it. So just give us like to start with, what's your first take on what should a founder be thinking about and what should they be focused on when they're talking about growth? And more importantly, what is the right time to be doing that? Because you talked about, we had to do all these other things early on, positioning and all of that stuff. So should I be thinking about channel at the same time, or should I put it off to later when I've got some reasonable evidence that I'm on the right track in terms of product market fit?
Okay. When I was launching, this was my number one regret, that I didn't start sooner, because I was in the maker mode. I didn't want to be like a lot on social media and on events, because I genuinely felt that that would defocus me so much. Whenever I'm in my ninja, I'm in my ninja. I eat, sleep, work, and walk my dogs. That's freaking it. So once I got to the actual launch, like to the big launch that I was working 1 year towards, I was scared shitless, because like literally I didn't have the audience built and warmed up for the launch. I regretted this choice so much, but I also know that it was kind of a necessary choice to just like finish the product. So these are two factors that you need to balance. Whenever you are AKA building in public, and by this, I don't mean that you become an obnoxious influencer or LinkedIn, but just like that you are sharing some pictures, sharing some findings, sharing what's up with the product, you are starting to create a community. And just like a bunch of people will support you because they are cheering for the underdog. I don't know what else to say here, right? So it's your loss if you are not doing this, because those people might be your early adopters, or they might know somebody who will be your early adopters. So I would genuinely recommend to start the communication 3 to 6 months before you ever go and launch. Now, you could be doing sign up for launch, like build mail list. That's a very nice idea as well. But it depends like on your resources that you have at disposal. I cannot be here and say, you should be posting 5 times a week on LinkedIn to build demand for your upcoming go-to-market mission, because that's not realistic for most people, right? But just make it once a week, once per 2 weeks, something which is like approximately consistent. And by doing that, we are already creating like our important marketing and communication and sales assets. More importantly, we are learning how to do this well. Because the majority of problems when it comes to channels, it comes with execution. As a founder, especially on a shoestring budget, you will more likely than not have to DIY this. So if you are just like there, completely burn out after the launch, after all the product works, and like then trying to like, oh, and then I should write a LinkedIn status about my launch, this won't work. First of all, this status is not going to be very good because you haven't developed like the habit and the muscle, and the organic reach is going to suck because the audience is not nicely warmed up already. So that's an asset that you definitely want to create. Now, whenever it comes to channels, so I know that people are thinking my go-to-market strategy is to post on LinkedIn a lot, to hire a couple of influencers, and to go and speak on 5 podcasts a week. That's not it. In terms of just like making sure that we have a proper systematization of all this confusing landscape of 10,000 channels that are out there, let's divide them into 7 go-to-market motions. The first one is inbound. That's you posting about the product on social media, creating blog posts, doing free events, whatever content you can create that would potentially attract some leads. The second one, and we have talked about this a lot already, and I like that you haven't resisted yet, so maybe you will in the continuation, is outbound. I always love to say to my founders that there are 2 ways how to get a client. First of all, they can find you, or you tell them you exist. Since I'm a very proactive person, I don't like to wait that people magically find me. I prefer to tell them that I exist. So you send out DMs, you do cold calling, sometimes email, and just like making sure that you are talking to your target audience. Then we have paid. When it comes to paid, people have a lot of prejudice. So they think that this is going to be super expensive. Yes, if you do it on LinkedIn, where clicks cost like $5 to $7 even. But you can test it really well for product-led growth products, even using like simple Google Ads. One of my teams who launched a symptom checker, which is a health app, literally spent $200 on Google Ads in order to attract 1,500 users. So paid does not have to be 10 budget. You can play around with small budget if that's available to you. Last but not least, when it comes to paid, we need to counterbalance it immediately and say communities. Communities are free to use. The important thing is that you go where the audience is, where your ICP is actually hanging out, and that you are not a talking trash can there, that you are not like, good news, today we launched this product, because that's a recipe to get banned immediately. You really, really, really need to start by adding value in these communities and presenting yourself as a valuable member, because otherwise you're a spammer. You're an intruder in the place that they trust and love, and they won't be very nice to. Then we have account-based marketing and sales. So this is very opposite to outreach. Imagine it in a way, if I'm here and I would be like outreaching, I would say, here are potential 20,000 companies that could be using my products. Let's try to see who is interested in this. But in account-based marketing and sales, we are creating systems of multiple points such as email, phone call, LinkedIn message, maybe event. Maybe we are liking and commenting on their posts. in order to win a portion of very clearly defined account. So, for example, we talked about enterprise beforehand. If my target is, for example, that Mercedes-Benz and Tesla Innovation Center and just like a couple of other cars that I'm not familiar with dropping because I don't know a lot about this. If I'm targeting this type of industries, I would identify decision makers there and understand just like decision making units, multiple decision makers that are making this decision together. And I would be developing a very targeting plan how to, in longer period of time, develop a relationship with them, earn their trust, and potentially get them on the meeting. Because if I go now and I try to cold outreach to a CEO of McDonald's, I won't get that far. Really, I won't. I'm lucky, but that doesn't happen a lot. So last but not least, we do have a poster child of what everybody wants, which is product-led growth, meaning that the product would actually be so awesome that people would recommend it and convert it and bring other members into this. Well, the problem with this one is that it still requires some input to the fund. So you need to bring people to your own product. And luckily, if everything works and the product is amazing and you nail the users, you can unlock this lever of exponential growth. But I haven't seen a single use case where people would be like very successful in developing growth loops and just like these type of mechanisms from the scratch. So you first need to acquire your users traditionally with other go-to-market motions that we have talked about. So this is how I frame this question of channel. It's never like, almost never, a single channel. I mean, I know the teams who have been like number one of Hacker News, for example, or Reddit, and like all this buzz came from a single channel, but more likely than not, it is combination of channels and go-to-market motions that we talked about.
So just to summarize channel, it sounds like early on, you have to be doing the inbound. Like you have to be out there on LinkedIn. And your channels kind of start growing and stacking up along with the development of your own path, right?
Well, you don't have to. I know a lot of teams that have been successful with outbound alone. So in that case, you just need a LinkedIn profile if you're a B2B company that will look semi-decent and keep your jobs updated.
Got it. But there's still a sequence, right? Like you start with the smaller things, the $200 ads when you're still testing out your value proposition. And then you kind of invest more and more as you get more certain and you're more sure about it.
Yes and no, because if you are playing the enterprise game, you would have to go with account-based sales and marketing already, right? Good. So some of the things are really product specific, but like in theory, you're right. Like first we are doing a lot of stuff and like nothing is really adding up so far. And then you see these engines working and producing better results.
Awesome. The last thing I want to talk about in terms of topic is, this thought around experimentation and testing, right? So I've heard that theme throughout every single thing you've said, which is what, frankly, I like the most about your approach is because it's very evidence-based.
This is how I shake off all the responsibility as a founder. I don't know. I will test it.
So walk me through, like for a founder, what are the basics of inculcating this experimentation mindset and how should I be thinking about how can I develop a muscle and a skill set around experimentation for my go-to-market strategy? If you can just give us the Cliff Notes version.
It's more of a mindset. So first of all, we have to be okay with scientific methods. So instead of us and our ego making all the decisions based on previous work experience and general opinions, we have to come up with the peace of mind that in the beginning, there are so many unknowns. And that's okay. You don't have to pretend that you know stuff which you don't. It's better to go out there and generate some evidence, some sort of information, intelligence on base you can make this decision, right? So we have to be okay with the idea of embracing uncertainty and we have to believe that experimentation works. If that's not the issue, fine. You can build successfully companies without this as well. Allegedly, I haven't done it. But the thing is, after you're okay with the general mindset, imagine it as just like this typical scientific method. A lot of people here are from science and from technology. And obviously, I don't have to quote Francis Bacon for you, but it's like literally you formulating hypotheses based on your observation of the market, whatever is going on in your product analytics, what your nasty competitors are doing, and maybe some sort of role model companies that you have, plus general ideas like human inceptions, creativity. So you have a bunch of hypotheses. And in order to just select the ones that will most likely move the needle in your business, you need a prioritization framework. So how will you select the ideas to test based on 1,000 ideas that you think you should be doing? So in order your prioritization frameworks, I don't have any favorites, but the simplest one to apply to start with is ICE framework by Sean Ellis. So its impact confidence is, if I have an idea, I would score it 1 to 5, from 1 to 10, whatever you want, based on 3 different criteria so that I can decide which ideas do I actually want to take for a spin. And then it comes to experiment design. And this is where things get really messy in go-to-market, because more often than not, we cannot operate within the measures of statistical significance. We can, if we spend the ass out of the people or do a little bit of budget testing or something like that. So if you are not in the position of do that, you will just have to learn to live with the fact that you cannot perfectly apply the experimentation method, but that you can at least generate some evidence of what could be more true than another thing, right? So don't seek for perfection would be my favorite type of advice here, because you work with what you have pragmatically as that.
But
and based on that, we learn and iterate.
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt there. What's
No
good enough?
worries.
Like knowing that I don't have the budget, the $30,000, how do I get to good enough? Like, is there a sign? Is there a rule, a guideline?
I would love to present it to you if there would be, but look, if you see like a very tangible difference, for example, when we tested positioning for the go-to-market strategist book, my initial idea as a dumbass founder was to write from overwhelmed to hyper-focused, because I thought that it beautifully captures the essence of the mindset of my founder. Little did I know that it doesn't mean anything to anyone. So when we ran ads, and the budget back then was like up to $1,000, I mean, it's not a huge budget. We were split testing like this, my idea, my ego founder idea, against what we described as like more valuable positioning. So my team member who's in charge of the funnel said like the promise that we should be giving to people is how to get to profitable traction fast. Preferably we would specify the time unit, but from strategy to profit is a clear idea. So from overwhelmed to hyper-focused had negative ROI, and the conversion rate on the website were below 2%. So that's definitely not something that I want to keep. However, when we had the refined positioning as the other variable, the conversion rate on organic were 8 to 9%. When we had it paid, it was like 6 to 5. And I kind of saw 2x difference between those. Was it like super statistically significant? No. But I feel very comfortable about using this type of refined messaging and positioning because it consistently performs better than my initial idea. That was a painful thing for me to learn, that I'm not the smartest, but I like to make profitable traction too. So I had to live with this.
Fantastic. You've told us a lot. So I want to round out our conversation. If you had maybe the top 3 things, regardless of where I am in the early stage as a founder, and I may have already done certain things, maybe I'm rethinking some of that. Give me 3 actionable steps I can take now to get back on track in terms of my go-to-market strategy.
Okay. So first of all, you probably know that I have a free template, go-to-market power hour. I did a demo, and everything that we have talked about today is presented on a 1-pager so that you can literally apply it to your company. So this is a template that will definitely bring you this overview of what is going on here and what are the parts that you don't feel specifically comfortable filling in. I am a very focused person, so I always center everything around the objective. So I can ask myself on a daily basis, is it mission critical? When I have initial additional ideas and when the new opportunities emerge. So for me, like mission critical is achieve the objective. Like for the next quarter or so, I'm committed, and this is the only reason that I'm taking my decision to. So yeah, it's this one. Then like the second one would be, talk to at least like 10 or 20, if you can, customers or prospects on a weekly basis whenever you need more insights, because the best copy, the best type of this intelligence that we mentioned again and again. So where they are, how they are seeing your products, what are the questions? Can you watch them use this product in real time? I do believe that as a founder, as long as you are spending face-to-face time, virtual time with your customers, that you are on high note, that you will eventually get there and people will help you. Because look, big corpos will never do this. Will like big corpo such as Loom, for example, care about whose user Maja Voje that struggles to remove timer from the tool? Not necessarily, but a small startup will. So that can be literally your superpower. And last but not least is to build a lot of resilience. As we have mentioned again and again in this podcast, there are so many unknowns. There are so many unknowns. And we just need to buckle up and do this work and believe that we can do this over a prolonged period of time without seeing any delayed gratification, without being immediately rewarding for what we are doing. So delayed gratification is something that we can hope for, but the reward doesn't necessarily come. So we have to live with the fact that we will do our best, that this is our mission for the next quarter or so, that we have done everything that we have possibly can in terms of giving our best shots to literally prioritize and optimize the resources we had and we could obtain towards this mission that we are on. And last but not least, you mentioned it beautifully, I think, in the script or during the conversation, but surround yourself with people that are in it to win it with you, right? Because the majority of our friends will be supremely bored if we start talking about positioning and pricing.
True for me.
And yeah, they're special friends. So just be around like-minded people, surround yourself with people who are in it with you together, support each other with best practices, with sharing them, with advice, with like very honest feedback, because I love to believe it whenever I'm doing some sort of testing and people are like, right, but I think loved it. Then no. Don't tell me what's good. Tell me what's wrong so I can fix it. This is literally the focus. So I hope that from this monologue that you get the essentials of go-to-market strategy, and last but not least, try to make it fun as well. Look, if it was easy, anybody could do it, right? My mom could do it. She's a great woman, but she likes work-life balance a lot. And she's like there with her hobbies. So you would have to commit yourself towards this journey. It will feel uncomfortable for some time, but also the potential reward is exponentially higher than anything else that I can imagine.
Fantastic. This has been an amazing conversation, Maja. I know that all of our founders will love it. So thank you. I will definitely recommend your book. I personally think it's one of the best I've read, if not the best on go-to-market strategy.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your Amazon review. This is a stellar one. I love it.
Fantastic. So I'll be back in touch, and I really thank you. Wish you all the best.
Bye. Take care. Ciao. Bye.
Bye.
And that's a wrap for today. Thank you for tuning in. If you find these conversations helpful in your own journey, please subscribe to Seed to Success, our weekly community letter with tips, insights, resources, and more. If you have any other questions relating to startup finance or financial storytelling, send them over to me at chakras@achieve.co. That's chakras@achiiv.co. We'll see you on the next episode of Invisible Inc. Now, go achieve!